If your lavender died this year, I can almost tell you how it happened before you describe it to me. It did not freeze. It drowned. That sounds backward. The same plant that shrugs off 20 degrees below zero in a Minnesota winter will rot and collapse in a warm, wet August in Georgia. Cold gets the blame in almost every garden. Water is what actually does the killing. And the proof is sitting in one of the wettest corners of the country, a small town in Washington state that grows more lavender than almost anywhere in North America, on about the same rain as Los Angeles. By the end of this, you will know exactly what went wrong in your yard and the one change that fixes it. Here is the misdiagnosis almost everyone makes. A gardener loses a lavender plant over the winter, looks at the brown skeleton in spring, and decides it was not hardy enough for her zone. So next time she buys a different one, plants it in the same spot, wraps it against the cold, and loses it again. The University of Illinois Extension puts it plainly. It is dampness, more than cold, that is responsible for killing lavender plants, not temperature. Dampness. Your lavender did not need a blanket, it needed a drier place to stand. To understand why, you have to separate two things that gardeners treat as one. Cold hardiness and wet tolerance are not the same trait, and lavender has the first without much of the second. And here is the second thing nobody at the garden center explains. When you pick up a pot labeled lavender, you could be holding one of several very different plants. English lavender, the classic silver-leaved kind with tight purple flower spikes, is the cold, tough one. That is the one that handles 20 below zero. But those showy lavenders with the little rabbit ears on top are Spanish lavender, and they are often damaged or killed below about 10 to 15 degrees. The big fragrant types you see at lavender festivals are usually lavandines, a hybrid group. And the soft French types with the toothed leaves are the most tender of all. The tag at the store rarely tells you which one you are holding. That matters more than anything else printed on it. So when we talk about lavender surviving cold, we are talking about English lavender specifically. What it cannot survive is sitting in soggy soil while it does. Cold, dry lavender lives. Cold, wet lavender dies. Warm, wet lavender dies faster. Once you see those as two separate dials, every confusing thing about this plant suddenly makes sense, and you stop making the one mistake that kills it. That single idea is worth more than any fancy variety you could buy. If that just clicked for you, hit subscribe and drop your zone in the comments. Tell me where your lavender died, because that tells me which of these next 3 stories is yours. Because lavender dies in 3 different ways, depending on where you garden. You will recognize yours immediately. The first death belongs to the Southeast, Virginia, the Carolinas, Georgia. Here, the plant usually makes it through winter just fine, looks healthy in spring, and then collapses in the heat of late summer. 1 week, it is silver and upright. A week later, the center is brown, and the whole plant pulls loose from the soil with almost no resistance. What killed it has a name. It is a group of water molds called Phytophthora, and it is the most important lavender disease in the United States. It has been documented on lavender in dozens of states. The word mold makes people reach for a spray, but forget the fungicide aisle. These organisms move through wet soil the way fish move through water. Warm, soggy ground after an afternoon thunderstorm is exactly the conditions they need. You cannot spray your way out of this. Dry, fast-draining soil is the only defense because you are removing the water they travel through. That brings us north, where the plant dies in the opposite season for a reason that looks like cold, but is not. Picture a garden in Minnesota or Montana, somewhere along the Canadian border. The lavender goes into winter looking fine and comes out in spring loose, blackened at the base, often half lifted out of the ground. The gardener says it froze. What really happened is two things, and both are about water. When wet soil freezes and thaws over and over, it swells and shrinks. That movement physically heaves the shallow crown up out of the dirt, tearing the roots. The plant is pushed out of its own bed. At the same time, weeks of melting snow pool around that crown and rot it from the soil line up. The temperature reading on the worst night was not the murder weapon. The slush sitting against the stem for a month was. A lavender on a dry mound in that same garden, where the meltwater runs off instead of pooling, comes through the same winter alive. And then there is the Pacific Northwest, where the death is quieter, and the gardener often helps it along without knowing. Western Oregon and Washington do not get brutal cold. What they get is long, mild, soaking wet winters, months of gray drizzle that keep the soil damp from October to May. Lavender roots sitting in that cool, wet ground slowly rot. The cruel part is what happens in summer. The rain finally stops. The gardener sees a Mediterranean plant and assumes it must be thirsty and starts watering it right on top of soil that never fully dried out. An established lavender out here barely needs watering at all. The hose is often the thing that finishes the job the winter started. Maybe you garden in a true Zone 3 winter, or your soil is heavy clay that stays wet no matter what you do. Then I will be honest with you. The ground may simply not be the place for it. Grow it in a large pot, you can move to an unheated garage for the worst of winter, and you sidestep the whole problem. Now, the proof that ties all three together. If lavender were really about warmth, the lavender capital of North America would be somewhere hot and sunny. It is not. It is Sequim, a small town on the Olympic Peninsula in Washington. It sits in the rainy upper left corner of the map, and it grows lavender by the dozens of farms. Here is its secret. The Olympic Mountains catch the Pacific storms and wring them out on the far side. So Sequim sits in what locals call a rain shadow, a dry pocket that gets under 16 inches of rain a year. That is about the same rainfall as Los Angeles. A town in one of the wettest regions of the country became the lavender capital. Not because it is warm, because it is cool and maritime. It earned the name because it stays dry and drains well right where the roots are. Warmth was never the requirement. Dryness at the root was, which is exactly what you can give your plant in any zone, in any state, no matter how much rain falls around it. So here's the fix, and it comes in two parts. The first part is the one thing to remember if you forget everything else. Plant high and keep the crown dry. Do not dig a hole and drop the plant in at ground level, especially in clay. Build the soil up instead. A raised bed, a gentle slope, or even a simple mound of soil a few inches high under each plant changes everything. It gives the water somewhere to go besides the roots. Mix the soil lean and gritty with plenty of coarse sand or fine gravel worked in, not rich compost. Lavender wants poor, sharp, fast-draining ground. And here is the detail almost everyone gets wrong. Do not mulch it with bark or wood chips. Those hold moisture against the base of the plant, which is the last thing it wants. If you mulch at all, use gravel or small stone and pull it back an inch or two from the stem so the crown stays dry. Then, once the plant is established, put the hose down. More lavender dies from kindness with a watering can than from neglect. The second part of the fix is choosing the right plant for your weather in the first place, because the toughest variety in the wrong climate still struggles. For most of you, in zones 4 through 7, the answer is English lavender, and two old varieties lead the pack. Munstead and Hidcote are the most reliably cold-hardy you can easily buy, compact, deep purple, and happy through a properly drained northern winter. In the far north, give them a spot where snow will cover them, or lay a few evergreen boughs over them in an open winter. If you garden in the humid southeast, look instead for a variety called Phenomenal. It is a newer American-bred lavender, and it handles heat and humidity better than almost anything else on the market. I will be straight with you though, it is not magic. Wet summer soil will still rot even Phenomenal, so the drainage rules still apply to it completely. And those pretty lavenders with the little flags on top, the Spanish ones, and the soft-toothed French types? They are gorgeous, but they are not cold-hardy. North of Zone 7, treat them as a one-season plant or a pot you bring inside, no matter what the tag at the store suggests. Two last honest things, because they catch good gardeners every year. First, if you live where pruning winters are hard, do not cut your lavender back in fall. Pruning then wakes up tender new growth that has no time to toughen before the cold, and it can kill an otherwise healthy plant. Wait until spring, after you see fresh green starting, and shape it then. Second, do not feed it. Lavender is a lean plant from poor Mediterranean hillsides. Rich soil and fertilizer give you a floppy, soft, disease-prone plant with fewer flowers, not more. Starve it a little, and it rewards you. So let us turn all of this into something you can actually use. Before you plant a single lavender next spring, run a 2-minute check. 1. Sun. Does the spot get at least 6 full hours? If not, stop. It will never thrive there. 2. Water. Dig a hole a foot deep, fill it, and come back in a few hours. If it still holds water, do not plant in the ground there. Build up or use a pot. 3. The mound. Plant a few inches high in lean, gritty soil with gravel mulch pulled back from the stem. 4. The variety. Munstead or Hidcote for zones 5 through 8, and they can make it in zone 4 with reliable snow cover. Phenomenal for the humid south, zones 6 through 9. Spanish or French only if you are willing to treat them as guests for a season. Run that check, and the plant that died on you every single year becomes the plant that outlives the gardener. That is not a list of facts. It is a 4-step gate, and almost nothing gets through it and dies. If this saved you a plant, tell me in the comments which zone you garden in, and whether yours was a winter death or a summer one. I answer everyone, and your story helps the next person who lost the same plant for the same reason. Subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.